today. And first of all, I would like to extend my gratitude to Monocle and UCT for hosting this monumental event that would help in defining, especially for youngsters, where your careers are going and how you're going to contribute towards the future that is driven by technology. So, as per that glamorous introduction, my role at the bank is to help drive various data strategies. In other words, uh, help the bank use data as an enabler. And one of my key jobs is to making sure that I manage my staff members' careers perspectives. So in other words, I have to help them know where their skills are going to. Almost a futurist of helping them prepare for the future much better. And the future we're talking about here, I'm sure you've all heard on several occasions, is the fourth industrial revolution, which everyone is talking about. You've had a lot of heads of states, a lot of countries invest in these technologies and put together teams that are helping make a difference to society. But it's normally confusing when you talk about the fourth industrial revolution. How did we really get to the fourth industrial revolution? Let's look a bit about the other revolutions. The first industrial revolution happens around 1750s. And we see two major industries revolutionized. The first one is the textile industry. Before then, people used to knit and put together textile at home. Now industrialization happens, and we see now people start going to work and developing textile at work. Then the transport industry as well was majorly revolutionized. Before that, we had horse-drawn wagons. Then the British decided, no, we need to change the way we move from A to B. No, they invented the steam engine. The second industrial revolution happened around the 1870s, and we saw now the mass production of things. As an example, before that, if you lost your key, you had to replace your padlock. After that, if you lost your key, because there was mass production of keys, you'd actually have to just replace your key. We also saw the automobile industry revolutionized, Henry Ford, and which actually built up on the transport industry. This revolutionized was so special. The energy industry was also invented during this revolution. And electricity, water energy started at this time. The third one, which looks at platform. For those of you who don't know, Silicon Valley was named after the silicon chip on your computers. The platform, the internet started in the third industrial revolution, automation of functions of platform. And I'm going through these revolutions because these three revolutions build up to what we have in the fourth industrial revolutions, where we're having cyber-physical systems embedded in human lives. There's so much interconnectedness. There's so much information being generated here, everywhere, there, almost in real time. I'm sure it's not something unique having a cell phone device anymore. Devices are so much connected, which we call Internet of Things. But there's something peculiar about this revolution. It's the element of expectation. Nowadays, if anything happens, we know we want this. If there's an accident, we ask ourselves, why did this accident happen in the era of technology? If someone is sick and goes to the hospital, we start saying, how could you not cure this with all the technology we have? If there's a crime somewhere, how could the police not pick this up? We have so much resources. It's all about that technology and the expectation around it. These capabilities of the fourth industrial revolution are driving technologies that are changing the way things are being done globally. And the technologies behind this are artificial intelligence, machine learning, and deep learning capabilities. So artificial intelligence deals with making systems, objects, or processes execute functions with the same intelligence like human beings. And it's been there for a long time, but the key strength of why these capabilities is driving now is, one, there's so much data, information that is representing the way human beings do things. The second part is the computing power. We have so much computing power. Our systems can now process a lot of information, can stream a lot of real-time data, and execute functions and algorithms the way human beings will do it. The second technology is machine learning, which is a subset of artificial intelligence, which basically deals with making systems or machines learn from data and make decisions using data the same way human beings would have done. In fact, a lot of people call machine learning the AI of data science. What happens in data science is you collect a lot of information, represent them in use cases, and learn from data and make decisions. So for example, you could collect data around marketing a certain product, right? You collect the appropriate data, put it together, and develop an algorithm or a rule that allows you to market that product. The learning takes place at two stages of that process. The way you collect information, because you have to collect the relevant information for marketing, and the type of decisioning you make around it. Then the third capability or technology is deep learning, which is also a subset of AI that is designed around the human brain, neurons. An average human being has about 76 billion neurons. 80% of these neurons are used to collect information. So the way we are sitting in this room now, you're looking at me talking and processing this information. 20% of these neurons are used to take decisions and react to the way, you're processing information. And it's basically designed at building capabilities that will help technologies execute functions like human beings. Now, this is very complex, and this is why computing power is so relevant in running these type of capabilities. And it's taken researchers a long time to get to this level. There's so much data that represents these capabilities. Just I want to go through a couple of industries that are being disrupted. We've seen language translation now being disrupted and being executed by machines. If you look at a lot of series and movies, and translation is being done by machines now. Language can actually be translated more accurate than the way human beings will do. We're talking now about the medicine industry. Machines are now detecting cancer 6 years before doctors would have done that now. In Rwanda, we're having capabilities to allow patients to diagnose eye infections way before. And this provides an opportunity to actually cure these diseases, because normally doctors diagnose this when it's too late. In the media and entertainment industry, I've talked about language translation, but also virtual reality enables create scenes and images that are so complex that will be very costly and expensive by leveraging just human involvement directly. Then safety and security is one of the other areas. Now, by having a human being just look at an ID or a document and sign off does not necessarily guarantee that it's safe and secure. There's certain features on images called pixels that are so detailed that machines can help us verify and identify detail to actually making sure that you're secure. And a lot of you guys have heard about autonomous cars. There's lots of accidents happening across the world. And the main problem is, as human beings, as we drive cars, it's difficult for us to process a lot of information at the same time. A lot of accidents happen because, there's so much happens at the same time. So autonomous cars and these technologies will help us prevent certain accidents, minimize occurrence of complex scenarios, in our transport system. Now, let's go back a bit to revolutions. Every time there's been a revolution, there's a school of thought that has taken place, which goes towards the design thinking. So for example, in the first revolution, when the British said, we want to rethink how we move from A to B, right? They went back to the drawing board and said, we cannot continue using horse-drawn wagons. Let's rethink how we do things. They decided to reinvent the steam engine. They did not say, okay, why don't we just give these horses energy drinks, or why didn't we, breed more horses and continue the same industry? They went back to the drawing board and decided to do things in a totally different way. And this is what we call design by first principle thinking. Another example is the SpaceX Falcon X. In the 60s and 70s, the Americans ran the Apollo program designed to lift the Skylab and take scientists to the moon for research purposes. And they spent about 1.2 billion US dollars in this project of today's value. They tried to create efficiencies with versions of the new rockets, but down the line they could only reduce the cost by 30% at most. Then Elon Musk came and said, listen, how about we rethink how to redesign rockets? And he decided to invest in the 3D capabilities and build titanium metals with parts with a redesigned new rocket, and spent less than 5% of the cost and managed to take Tesla to the moon. There's lots of other examples. For example, Steve Jobs, when he decided to come up with the iPhone, he did not take the Nokia or Ericsson and say, okay, fine, let's just continue polishing this and continue going forward. Go back to the drawing board and redo everything else. First principles thinking. Now, the second school of thought goes to the guys who adopt technology. And I want to talk a bit about the finance industry. So for those of you who have interacted with banks and insurance companies, you'll notice that before the 50s, the bank was a place, you'd go to a house and, you'd go put your money in, or withdraw your money, or move your money, or invest your money. So that was a utility function of a bank. Then, in 1953, MIT developed the first mainframe for the banking industry called ERMA, Electronic Recording Machine of Accounting. And the reason for that was to try help digitize the banking utility functions. Then, when the third industrial revolution happened, we saw now the utility function of the banking industry move outside the bank because of demand. Now you could now go to the ATM and withdraw money. You could go to the ATM and move your money. And we can see this has grown to the online platforms, right? Where now you're still able to do the same functions. And while these capabilities have grown, we're now seeing them being extended into technologies like the chat, or even virtual assistants like Alexa, where you are able to do your banking through these digital platforms. But while you go through this clip, you need to realize that while the technology has changed over time, it's still the same banking utility function. A deposit is still a deposit that was in 1953. It's just changed along with technology. A withdrawal is still a withdrawal. An investment is still an investment. Now, as I said, the fourth industrial revolution has expectations. It's not a time to play along with technology. It's time to rethink how we do things and reinvent the future. So first principle thinkers, if you look at this graph, envisage a future and redesign a new future. So as students here, you need to think about of yourselves as Steve Jobs, as Elon Musk, you know, as the British who decided to reinvent how you're going to move from A to B. This is like Jack Ma when he said, listen, I want to design a computer system that will enable move money from across the world as easy as sending a WhatsApp message. Now, iterative thinkers, or those who design by analogy, like the banking industry where you adopt technology, play along with the first principle thinkers. So first principle thinkers invent the future, you know, like Uber, or I talked about Jack Ma or Elon Musk. And those who design by analogy play along. When you look at the red line, these are the guys who are a bit overconfident, and they say, okay, fine, we cannot be disrupted. We're confident with everything. And normally, in the present world, it could take even 3 months for you to be disrupted fully. This is like Kodak. This is like Nokia. And it's becoming normal to actually get disrupted in the present world. And this is why these capabilities are very, very, very powerful, because they enable you change things within a short period of time. Now, let's talk a bit about strategies, because these technologies change the way you strategize. Any organization is driven by two things: the people and the culture. Any organization, the university, whatever you do, it's people and culture. In the era of technology, people and culture drive how you're going to use technology to achieve these things. And under people, you have competencies, different competencies. It could be data science capabilities, artificial intelligence. It could be a culture of collaboration so that you can achieve a bigger picture. But this also have to align to what you want to achieve. Are you interested in revolutionizing the health industry? Is that your strategy? Are you interested in revolutionizing the education system? Are you interested in revolutionizing the environment? So just like any other strategy, these capabilities have to align to what you want to achieve. And what you want to achieve are represented by what you call use cases. So use cases or processes. Do you want to digitize things and things like that? Now, the word strategy sometimes can be confusing. The word strategy comes from the Greek word strategiki, which means put components of things together so that you can achieve a certain goal in the future. So those components have to work together. It happens now that data, technology form part of those components, which also includes people, includes transformation of workforce and the way of thinking, change management and things like that. But then, something has changed. It's society. Society has expectations. Society measures you from what you're developing and how you're developing affects them. And most of these are represented by what we call the Sustainable Development Goals. If you look at the World Economic Forum and what UN has published, has listed these 17 development goals as areas where technology will play a role in influencing and solving some of the key challenges in the world. Now, this makes strategy even more complex, because at first, you were more concerned about building a culture and people to driving what you're trying to push, right? Now there is a third dimension which now says, but listen, we're designing this and pushing this, but this is what people are expecting, right? It's actually complex, because you're measuring yourself against what you're offering, but the society is measuring you from how what you're offering is influencing their expectations. Thanks. So Elon Musk wasn't competing against his peers. He had to empower his peers to be able to realize his bigger dream of saving the environment, saving the climate. When you dig deeper into his strategy, you realize Elon Musk's vision is that he doesn't even want people to think about ownership of cars because it's unnecessary. He's thinking so much about a quality life for human beings, renewable energy and things like that. Immediately after that, Elon Musk posted this picture saying, listen, he's not competing against these guys, he's competing against the fumes. You go back, you realize that is one of the sustainable development goals that he was actually looking at. After that, history speaks for itself, right? Tesla is one of the biggest suppliers of electric batteries to other car companies. In fact, companies like Toyota have been criticized of over-depending on Tesla's technology, right? Now, through that design thinking, Tesla has become so powerful. But Tesla was not competing with cars. It was trying to help save the environment. So just quickly, a few other examples. You've seen Google share its IP, open it to the world. Say, listen, we spent 20 years putting together the Google TensorFlow machine learning platform. Come and use it. Google knows that without having everyone play and use this technology, we are not able to solve some of these complex problems the world is facing. It's put their data together. We've seen Microsoft do that. We've seen Amazon do that. Huawei and all these big players do that. This is the ubiquitous model where you design for the world, the bucket design. So you design and share the bucket design. You don't share the water. I was very lucky to visit Dubai in March, and now they've followed a different approach of implementing this model, where they've said, listen, we're going to make it part of the legislation. So if you're operating in Dubai or the United Arab Emirates, you are forced to making sure you follow their strategy that incorporates measuring yourself and contributing towards sustainable development goals. And it's key that it's part of the legislation. It's compulsory. Any business has to contribute to this model. It's compulsory when you're operating in Dubai. So this is the way to go, because some of the key challenges hold economies. For those of you who don't know, those 17 sustainable development goals are estimated to be worth $150 trillion. And they could go by another $14 trillion by 2035. So they hold economies that we actually have to use these technologies to explore. And I have a very clear message for you. It requires us to change the way we do things. So when you guys meet future employers and companies, tell them this message that you have to contribute to society and make now that the business. And if you don't, I have a message for you. That's the message. I have a message. The second thing, you have to change your culture. You have to change your thinking. Because, all of a sudden, you have to move on from designing products and pushing them to now thinking about society, caring about environment, caring about people, caring about, some of, human rights, which things like crime and justice. It's a new way of thinking. If you don't, I've got another message for you. It's going to be very cold if you don't rethink the way we do things. But now, this brings a new chapter of the way things will be done in the future for business and everything. Because of these expectations, across the world, human beings want to be identified for who they are and how they behave in a very unique way. And if you're thinking of technologies, you have to collect information that helps identify people for who they are. And this involves stop identifying people with customer numbers and product numbers and things like that. There's now technologies that can help you identify people with their biometrics and things like that. That's why ID brokerage is going to be one of the biggest capabilities in the future from the time of onboarding. I'll give you an example. For those of you who don't know, when Uber launched, 30% of the drivers could not actually complete the onboarding process. Uber created a ubiquitous platform. They found out these were the 30% of drivers who never had bank accounts. They solved this by just linking them to the banking products. And overnight, Uber became one of the most valuable SME companies because they envisaged that type of platform. Now, if you're thinking about, for example, the payment industry, customers in the future would not want to operate with devices. They would want to play in the payment industry by themselves. We're seeing now this a lot in the Chinese market, where you would walk into a store through your facial recognition and your biometric features. The restaurant or the supermarket would link and access your bank account and details like that. And all of a sudden, you're able to go pick up your things, go use your biometric features to make a payment. Just because you don't have a bank account, a bank card with you or your device doesn't mean you don't have money, right? Let's look at this example here. Just like that. And that it's already happening. So when we're talking about disruptive technologies, we're not speculating anymore. It's not a story or a futuristic talk. This is what is happening, and it's disrupting all industries across the world. But we have to be cautious about technology, because with technology also comes with other risks. For example, the biggest crime that has cropped up now in China because of this is shoplifting, right? Because you could just hack into any social media profile, take your image and decide to do what? I'm going to use this guy's profile for shopping. He's got a lot of money. And AI is also helping identify anomalies of how people behave. People go with bags, and behaviorally, you can look at their body language and assess the likelihood that they are shoplifting. Now, going forward, it becomes a challenge of how we influence these social domains. Now, so think of Elon Musk and how he decided to disrupt the environment and the climate, to have the climate energy. It provides us an opportunity to do what? The health industry. So you need to rethink how you'd make yourself relevant. The education industry. Last year alone, the budget for education was 240-something billion. 16% of our budget went to education, right? I don't think putting so much money into it will solve the problem. Some of the challenges require technology, streaming of quality education across, sharing of knowledge, and things like that. We need to relook at some of these problems. Agriculture. 2017, Africa spent $65 billion importing food. We even import food from Dubai, from a desert. Seriously. Those are economies that could be used in empowering other areas. And it's important that we understand how these technologies will play a role in these areas. We could go on and on and on, but the whole idea is through technology, we have to now focus on understanding the journey of human beings and linking them to these networks. I want to go through a couple of use cases of how we're doing this in the finance industry. For those of you who understand that natural language is one of the key areas of understanding how people communicate and how they express themselves. A lot of you are on social media and you express yourself with statements like that, right? For a long time, it's been difficult to understand and structure language, understand language, because you can't have people reading everything. So we employing a lot of natural language understanding techniques, which are machine learning capabilities that are enabling us understand how human beings speak, how they express themselves, their needs, because through these capabilities, you are able to link to this ubiquitous network and provide solutions for them. If someone is sick, you need to understand what they mean how they're expressing themselves when they're sick. Now, through that, we're able to find solutions by analyzing natural language and proactively recommending the right solutions for the right cause of the problem. Just quickly, this is an example of, for example, customers speak to you and you have to train and understand what the sources of their problems are. Previously, you'll have to employ a whole call center to be listening to customers and recording things. But right now, with natural language understanding capabilities, you are able to score a conversation, score a voice, and pick up the source of the problem. I'll just skip this through quickly. And now we're able to look at the customer journey. The customer journey is very important. The human journey is important because only through the journey, you're able to find for them the right solution in the network. Then, for example, we've got call center capabilities, voice capabilities. There's so much now translation, conversion of voice to data and things like that. Again, natural language understanding capabilities are enabling us to do what? To analyze voice and provide solutions based on the context of what the customers wanted. Credit, financial inclusion. If you look at the reports, a lot of people in society are struggling with credit. You get into credit, but due to different circumstances, you find that, customers overcommit in credit. But the best way to be there for a customer is to proactively understand their behavior of what is likely to happen in the future. Traditional credit models look at understanding customers' behavior at a point in time, right? But through AI and machine learning, you are now able to understand the journey of the customer and understand what is likely to happen in the future. So just as an example, we have a lot of data in the bank. Customer data, behavior data, and things like that. But that alone is not so relevant if you're not able to structure this information into the journey of a customer. Here's a big example. When you look at these graphs, we could have said, listen, a customer is likely to default on credit into the future. But that is us being correct. So what if I know you're going to default? We decided to do what? Structure the problem and have a mathematical representation of the journey so that the journey can help us help the customer not default into the future. That's what we call money management. In this example you see here, these are two customers. Each customer has their own journey, right? The blue line represents a different customer. The red line represents a different customer. And once their score in the journey is higher than a certain threshold, we now know we need to help them. There's something wrong with them. They could maybe be sick. They could be going through financial stress, right? We now need to be there for them. maybe offer them financial assistance, restructure their debt, you know. That allows us preventing that customer from going into financial stress. And that is the way of thinking. You're still assessing risk, but you're still helping the customer. And that is why these capabilities are now helping us do the same things, but in a totally different way. Financial crime costs the country a lot of money. We spend a lot of billions just in security and transparency, different types of crimes. And data is playing a role in making sure we outthink criminals. We outthink a lot of criminals, and we are proactive in providing solutions to specific threats. This includes some of the regulatory requirements, things like tax evasions, things like counter-terrorist financing. While some of these crimes might not be directly harmful to us, if we're not able to monitor them proactively using these capabilities, we are actually indirectly contributing to child trafficking. You know, transferring and moving of guns and things like that, which actually makes society not a very safe place. I want to quickly go to the ways of working. Now, at F&B, we employing a lot of technology to help monitor crimes. And you can imagine a lot of these crimes are so complex, and we've decided to employ machines to help our forensic areas monitor and assess these crimes more proactively, including taking the right decision at the right time. This is an example of a review report. So for example, if Mark is flagged for money laundering, you need to put together what's called a forensic report. A forensic report gathers information about Mark and says Mark is likely to be committing this crime, is moving money to a suspicious country. The other aspect of it is representing the thought process of an analyst who looks at that profile. But it has to be accurate. But the difficulty is we are human. It's very difficult for us to process a lot of information at the same time and be accurate around it. With the help of these machines, we are now able to do what? Help analysts perform much better, be more productive, be more accurate, get this diagnosis much more quicker and much more efficient. And machines are good at that. So instead of only spending a lot of time gathering information and putting together statements like this, including unstructured language, we're now using machines to do this. And it's an example of where AI is working with human beings to solve some of the complex problems. And this is happening across the world. In Estonia now, you see they've put together AI judges who are actually solving some of these cases much easier, to put aside resources to deal with much more complex cases. I just want to finish quickly by going through the workforce transformation. In 1811, there was a very big strike in London when industrialization of the textile industry happened. And the reason for that is when you do not involve everyone in a transformation of a revolution, you are likely not to succeed the way you'll have succeeded. And technology is actually also helping with this type of work, including how you onboard and how you acquire people with different skills. Let's look at the whole digitization workforce. The skills are so scarce nowadays. Getting skills is very difficult. These initiatives here are amazing. But we've also had situations where you find that the requirements of skills are changing so fast. If you look at this graph here, in 2015, critical thinking was the fourth most in-demand skill. In 2020, it's predicted to be among the top skills in demand. So it's important that through different analytical techniques, you predict and understand the demand so that they can provide the right training, the right upskilling of human workforce to prepare ourselves for the future. But at the same time, we've had situations where through different scenarios, we lose out on talent, or we miss out on talent because maybe there was not enough information, maybe there was a bit of bias in the interview process and things like that. And we ended up not having the right people in the right roles. Also, maybe there was misalignment between what you're supposed to prepare yourself for versus what was required. And AI is also helping in this area. So as an example, this is a robot called Vera developed in Russia that was developed by Alexander Uraksin, and it's revolutionizing the recruitment industry. Just have a look at this. Now, Vera can interview 1,500 candidates at the same time for the same role and go through a whole recruitment process in 1 week. 1 week. Imagine how much efficiencies, how much the human workforce will change. Easy to get you guys to get to the right roles. Vera is efficient because Vera has a lot of data across the world around jobs, around skills, and puts it together to create an efficient recruitment process. So now, all recruiters can work with Vera and just sign off the process. Just sign off and look and verify documents. And that's the way of the new way of thinking. Vera is being used by PepsiCo, it's being used by L'Oreal and very big companies, and it's proven a success. If you think some of the challenges we're facing, women only make up 5% of the CEOs of the 500 Fortune companies. They only make up 22% of the data science workforce. And through these technologies, that is the only way we're going to close that gap. Just to finish off, some of the key skills that will be crucial going forward. Data scientists will be on demand going forward to drive these capabilities. People who can derive insights from data, people who can design processes and represent the way things happen in life, people who can engineer data and solve complex problems. This will be the biggest popular job. Machine educators, people who will teach machines the current functions, whether it's recruitment, whether it's teaching. The teaching workspace will be done by machines. So people will be teaching machines to do these functions. People who will train machines how to sell. In Pretoria, we've got Robodoc now. Robodoc is helping doctors perform operations and things like that. I'm told in a few years, a doctor will be sitting in Cape Town and performing an operation on a patient in Johannesburg. But doctors will now be teaching robots how to perform operations. User experience and user design. This will be another job on teaching machines and creating interfaces on digital platforms. Behavioral psychologists. While you design processes, you need to understand how people will anticipate and react to what you've designed. So it's important you know the human psychology aspect, and it's not an area that should be overlooked, because you don't want to design something that will create much harm than benefit. I talked about ID brokers. It explains itself. People will need to be identified and linked to other networks. Then community builders, people who understand society much better, people who understand challenges in society so that this can be represented in the design of solutions that are being developed for society. Then blockchain. The blockchain technology, and I'm sorry I didn't spend a lot of time talking about it, it's just a network of bringing things together. using unique identifiers, which almost requires the unique identifiers to work together in linking things together, capabilities together. This is another area that is going to be much demand. Then lastly is regulation on AI. Things must be built for purpose. If we misuse these technologies, we're going to create more harm. We're already seeing that in the market, and it's important that we do not misuse them and use them for the right purpose. Otherwise, thank you so much. I've rushed to the last slides. I hope you don't have a lot of questions. Thank you so much for spending this hour with me here. Thank you so much.